Hello, my name is Vicki Baran, and in this presentation, I will be discussing how I would implement a plan to improve student behavior using social cognitive theory. To provide a little bit of background for my professional setting, I work at a private Catholic high school, and one of the current punishment systems we have in place is a demerit system. Students will be given demerits electronically submitted by a teacher if they are misbehaving. That could be a dress code violation, which is not following the school policy. That could be inappropriate cell phone usage. Our handbook states students are supposed to have their cell phones off and in their lockers. Or it could be maybe they're not paying attention during class, they are engaged in something else. Demerits can also be written for being tardy to class. That will lead to a demerit, inappropriate behavior of any kind. And if students get a certain amount of demerits, this can lead to a Saturday detention or an after-school detention. So these are some of the main issues that I have seen in student behavior since I've been there, and especially this year. The first one being dress code violations. Working at a private Catholic school, students are required to wear a uniform, and this includes making sure they are wearing every part of the uniform, especially the sweatshirt. One of the main issues we've had is students wearing non-uniform sweatshirts. This is mostly due to our vendor recently changing that provides our student uniforms. We are getting a brand new vendor next year. But also students, if they don't have a uniform appropriate sweatshirt, they are allowed to wear a long sleeve shirt underneath their uniform polo. Other issues with dress code also included students rolling up, especially the females, rolling up their skirts or their shorts to be shorter than they are supposed to be. And other dress code violations, again, this is what is stated in our handbook. Students are not allowed to have earrings, piercings, dyed hair, which I did see quite a bit of that this year, especially after the mask no longer being required. There were a lot of female students that got nose piercings. That was another issue that was coming up. Second, one of the biggest issues is phone usage. Phones are supposed to be off and in their lockers according to the policy. However, almost every single student has their phone on them, and it can often be a distraction during class. And then another major issue is we use the Microsoft Surface Pro. We are a Microsoft Showcase school, and every student has a computer. And one of the major issues is students playing games on their computer and also chatting with their friends using the Microsoft Teams app, which actually our school actually blocked the chat feature for students in the Microsoft Teams app. However, students were, of course, able to find a way around it. So these are just some of the major issues in terms of students not following school policy, especially at a private Catholic school where we do have a little bit more like a higher standard compared to other schools in terms of having that uniform. And then also just with being disengaged with class. So I would first discuss those issues with my colleagues, the principal, vice principal, dean of students, all of which they are well versed and well familiar with, I am sure of. And then I would go into discussing social cognitive theory and what it is and how we can apply it then to those issues that we see in our school. So again, this is just some of the highlights of social cognitive theory that relate to solving these problems that we see in the school I work at. So, inactive and vicarious learning. So, inactive learning is learning from consequences. So, obviously, students, they will hopefully learn from their consequences. If they keep getting demerits, you would expect them to not continue that behavior. However, there is no system in place for rewards to promote positive behavior, and that can definitely influence motivation. One thing that I did notice a lot this year is that it's always the same students that will keep getting demerits, and getting that demerit doesn't really seem to always influence their cognition or their way of thinking, or even change their behavior or motivate them to behave in a more positive way. Next is vicarious learning, so learning through observation. Obviously, students see when teachers give demerits or when they don't give demerits, when they give rewards, when they don't give rewards. And one of the major issues we have is that not every teacher will be on the same page. I will have a student come into my class wearing a non-uniform sweatshirt, and I tell them to take it off and I give them a demerit for it. But then they'll tell me, oh, well, so-and-so teacher was allowing me to wear the sweatshirt and they didn't give me a demerit. So students see that, they can see those inconsistencies, and they can see when when others are getting rewarded and when others are not getting rewarded. And when students see that, that's going to also influence their cognition and their motivation, whether or not they're going to do those negative behaviors. Self-regulation. Learners have choices. Students have choices in terms of what they are wearing to school and how they are going to act in school. Are they going to dress appropriately? Are they going to be using their cell phone during class? Are they going to be disengaged in class playing games? That is ultimately the student's choice, especially with high school students who are older and a little bit more developed. They definitely have a lot more well-developed cognition and are better able and usually can think more through their behaviors and how they want to act. Inhibition, disinhibition, this goes back to vicarious learning through observation. Again, students are going to see when other students are being punished, and if they see, oh, well, that teacher always gives demerits in this class, well, I can't act that way in class. But maybe they go to and that will inhibit that behavior. However, maybe they go to a different class and they see a teacher not giving out demerits, and that could inhibit certain behaviors. Oh, well, I can get away with this then. I can get away with that behavior. And then lastly, motivation and values. What motivates students to actually carry out those positive behaviors? What is going to motivate them to dress appropriately, to not be on their cell phones, to be engaged in class and not playing games on their computer? And what do they value? What, in terms of getting a reward, what might be valuable to students? If they're going to get a reward, what does that reward look like that will motivate their behavior? So let's connect social cognitive theory to how can we make changes in our school to better promote positive student behavior. So obviously we have a demerit system in place for punishment for negative behaviors, not following dress code, being on the cell phone, playing games, etc. However, we don't really have a system in place for rewards. We did have something called wow cards, which teachers could give out for students doing awesome things, but there wasn't really much of an effort behind that. You know, we weren't really always told like, okay, well, we give out this wow card. Well, what does a student get for that? So my proposal is that we put some some system similar to the demerit system in place, but one that rewards students. So, instead of writing, maybe instead of calling it a demerit, we could call it something else, and teachers can write those for students following the dress code, not using their phone during class, staying on task, not playing games during class. So then students will see, oh, wow, they're getting rewards for following the school policy, for behaving appropriately. This might be a better way to motivate students to continue these good behaviors. And if other students are observing those students getting the rewards, then it may motivate them to also behave appropriately. Also, those rewards that we're giving, they should be valuable. If we're giving students rewards, it should lead to something that will be valuable to them. And my suggestion to figure out what do students value is to actually get their input. Do a school-wide survey, see what students value. If you were to get something that's opposite of the demerit, that's rewarding, what would you want to cash in that reward for? Would you want, to have some type of a privilege? Would, you want some type of a physical prize of some sort? What would that value be for the students? Because that value is going to be, is going to motivate them ultimately. And then also every teacher has to be on board. Teachers have to make sure that they are not missing those opportunities to punish or reward behavior, especially to reward positive behavior, because that can lead to ultimately inhibition or disinhibition of certain behaviors. And also every teacher has to be on board with following these systems that are in place. And of course, that can lead to some challenges. Obviously, teachers cannot reward or punish every single behavior. That's just not logistically possible at all. So the issue with that is just, as far as like the consistencies go, that can be an issue, because as teachers, we're only human. We can't catch every single little behavior, but we could do our best to try to catch as many of them as possible and to be a little bit more conscious of that. Again, kind of going along the same lines here, we're not, obviously we aren't going to be able to catch every behavior, but students also won't necessarily see what behaviors might be rewarded or punished. If the teacher is not verbally saying, hey, I'm giving you this reward because you were doing X, Y, and Z. If other students don't see or hear that, then that's not going to encourage other students to also behave appropriately. And then also, this isn't always necessarily sustainable. Motivation by seeing others rewarded can be unsustainable, because it will only work if students believe they can also be rewarded. If a student is always seeing somebody else getting rewards and being well behaved, they're not going to also emulate that behavior that they're observing unless they believe they can also be rewarded for that. So that can connect to a student's, what is their confidence level in terms of being able to achieve that reward. And thank you so much for watching my presentation.